We go now to Jamaica, where the death toll continues to rise in the search for alleged drug lord Christopher Dudas Coke, wanted by the United States. Jamaican police confirmed Thursday that 73 people, the vast majority civilians, have been killed in clashes between security forces and Coke's armed supporters. Rights groups are raising questions about possible unlawful killings by security forces in the Tivoli Gardens area of the Jamaican capital of Kingston. Amnesty International has called for a thorough investigation. Meanwhile, Coke himself is still eluding arrest. American prosecutors describe him as the leader of the Shower Posse gang that murdered hundreds of people during the cocaine wars of the 1980s. Jamaica's former national security minister recently described Coke as the most powerful man in the country. After months of resisting U.S. pressure to extradite Coke, Jamaican Prime Minister Bruce Golding reversed his position and declared a state of emergency Sunday, vowing to capture him.
Coke had previously mobilized votes for Golding's party, and the Prime Minister even hired a lobby firm in Washington, Manat, Phelps and Phillips, to try to get the U.S. authorities to drop the extradition request. Well, for more, we're joined now by two guests. Benjamin Bowling is Professor of Criminology and Criminal Justice at King's College London and author of the forthcoming book, Policing the Caribbean, Transnational Security Cooperation and Practice. His latest piece in The Guardian is called Jamaica Bleeds for Our War on Drugs, where he writes, quote, "The chaos in Kingston is symptomatic of the failure of U.S.-led cocaine prohibition." And on the line from Kingston, Jamaica, we're joined by Carolyn Gomes. She is the executive director of the group Jamaicans for Justice. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's start in Jamaica with Carolyn Gomes. Tell us what's happening on the streets right now and what you think needs to happen.
It seems relatively calm. Certainly the attacks on police and police stations, the broad-based attacks across the island, Spanish Town, that seems to be tuning down, calming down. What needs to happen is that we need to get smart in this war that, quote-unquote, that we are fighting. We need to stop, ensure that the abuses of citizens' rights, which have characterized the operations of our security forces over many, many years, are not occurring, and that, if any, that we have independent oversight of the operations as they are occurring right now. And we need clear assessment of what happened in the last few days.
Now, there's been a history in Jamaica by the security forces of killings of civilians that have not been properly accounted for?
Absolutely. We've reported on it to the Inter-American Commission. There are numerous reports. Over decades, our rate of police fatal shootings is one of the highest in the world. Last year, our police killed 246 civilians, and there's not, in the last 10 years, there's been one prosecution of a policeman for illegal use of force. It's a real problem. We have a complete and total impunity for abuse of rights in Jamaica.
Professor Bowling, you're saying this is a failure of the war on drugs. Can you explain what you see is going on right now in Jamaica? You have the former Minister of National Security, Dr. Peter Phillips, saying Tivoli Gardens, that Christopher Dudas Coke is possibly more powerful than the Jamaican Labour Party itself.
Well, I think that in the broadest context, the prohibition of drugs has led to the creation of a clandestine market. Which is kind of a straightforward and obvious point, really, that if the war on drugs, in its pursuit of what is seen by many people as a kind of evil, fails to actually, prevent the growers and the transshippers and the consumers in the U.S. and in Western Europe from using cocaine, then the only way that people can get hold of it is on the clandestine market. So prohibition creates the clandestine market, which then requires arming in order for the traffic to proceed. The U.S. is the flow of firearms southwards from the U.S. Via the Gulf states and Puerto Rico is extreme. And Jamaican people have complained for many, many years that the northwards, the pressure to prevent the northwards flow of drugs has not been matched to any extent by the U.S. attempts to prevent southward flow of guns. That then links with a long-established, ongoing kind of political corruption and links between the so-called garrison communities, organized crime groups, the Dons, right up through the political structure. So cocaine has essentially created a massive funding base for people who understand themselves and see themselves and present themselves as business people, and that organized crime now reaches right through to the very heart of government. And when it's threatened, when this sort of para-state of the dons and the posses is threatened, they clearly respond with armed violence.
Now, what do you make of the fact that the Jamaican government, after resisting the extradition, then does this massive attack and somehow still has not captured the object of their search, Christopher Koch?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary. It's tragic, and, you know, my heart goes out to the families of the people who've lost loved ones and the people who've been injured in this, you know, in my view, entirely wasteful folly, and clearly not just unproductive, but counterproductive in terms of loss of life. And, I mean, I think the first thing is that, you know, as Carolyn says, the way in which the police have conducted themselves over recent years, over many years, in terms of extrajudicial executions, in terms of political corruption within the police and across government. It's hardly surprising that the government should have attempted to conceal their wrongdoing and to lobby to protect people who many within the community, many within the political class, see as their own. Why exactly at this point the government has chosen to turn a kind of sort of resistance of handing over coke into an offensive, it will need to be explored by an investigation, which I think absolutely needs to happen. It isn't just how the police have conducted themselves on the street that needs to be investigated. What is now needed is a thoroughgoing investigation, a public investigation of corruption within the police service, within government, the links with organised crime, on the extrajudicial executions, and how all of this links together. Because in order to respond to it, in order for Jamaica to move forward, there needs to be something, in my view, close to a truth and reconciliation process and a disarmament of the people on the streets who understand themselves within the organised crime groups, within the street corner crews, as soldiers. And that is, you know, we need to talk disarmament. We need to talk demobilization of people who see themselves as soldiers, and a more thoroughgoing and positive response, not warfare. That approach is not working.
Benjamin Moling, we're going to have to leave it there. Carolyn Gomes as well, thank you very much, from Jamaicans for Justice. And finally, that comment at the beginning of this segment, the blue chip law firm Manat, Phelps and Phillips signing a $400,000 contract to lobby on behalf of the government of Jamaica. Charles Manat is the former chair of the Democratic National Committee, who also represents the Dominican Republic, where he was an ambassador 10 years ago, hired to fight the extradition of Christopher Koch. That does it for our show. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Sharifa Bakadous, Aaron Mate, Angelique Comet, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Masood, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Peter Curries, Miguel Noguera, our engineers. Special thanks to Becca Staley, Julie Crosby, Nick Gilla, Hugh Grant, Samantha Chambly, Jessel Noor, Vesta Godars. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.